This is a lecture from OpenTuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
Continuing with chapter 23, our inheritance tax chapter, we're now going to take a closer look at the death estate. So the death estate, as I mentioned before, is treated effectively as one giant transfer of value with no annual exemptions. Yeah. So one giant transfer of value with no annual exemptions. Yeah. Do not deduct annual exemptions in the death estate. I've seen students do it so many times. So what we're going to do with the death estate is basically a list of any assets, and certain liabilities that are deductible to find out our net worth at the date of death. So in no particular order, we've got our death estate, an example here. So we've got land and buildings. So land and buildings, usually it's the house in which you live for most people. Now, if the house in which you live has got a mortgage on it, then we deduct the value of that mortgage against the house in the death estate. So we net the two off in the body of the death estate computation. House worth £500,000 with a £100,000 mortgage on it, show the two figures separately, and then take the 400,000 over to the total column. Now, something else that we could have at the date of death, of course, is we could be a sole trader or a partner in a partnership, and we need to value our business or our share of our partnership, and that goes into our death estate computation as well. We could have other investments, whatever they may be. And this brings me actually to a very important point. Just because something is exempt from one tax does not make it exempt from every tax. So investments would include things like government stock, things like qualifying corporate bonds. We've got ISAs in there as well, so stocks and shares in an ISA. Investment properties, we've got all sorts of things going on in there. So basically, the way that exemptions work for inheritance tax is we don't exempt assets, we exempt the transfer based on the recipient, and the only exemption in the death estate is the spouse exemption. So investments, say stocks and shares, including ISAs, government securities, say gilts, etc. Now, insurance policy there. Well, we've got proceeds, but it's not always proceeds. Now, it depends whose life it's on. So let's say, for example, that I've got a life insurance policy and I've taken it out on my husband's life. So if I take it out on my husband's life and then I die, that policy is not paying out because it's only paying out when I die. But it was my asset. So therefore, the amount to include in my death estate computation is the market value. Now, if it was on my life and I've died, then that policy is paying out. So the amount to include in the death estate computation is the proceeds. So whatever the insurance company has paid out as a result of my death. So there you go. So you can have either proceeds or you can have market value depending on whose life it's on. We've got motor cars. Once again, just because something is exempt from one tax doesn't make it exempt from another. So motor cars, bikes, caravans, antiques, blah, 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 personal chattels, the £6,000 rule doesn't apply for inheritance tax, and so on. It all goes in your death estate computation. Now, if someone owes you money at the date of death, we include the amount that they owe you, because obviously that is an asset, isn't it, if you've got a debtor. And we've got cash in the bank, on deposit, building account, building society account, savings account, and once again, including ISAs. So basically everything that you own at the date of death goes into your death estate. So we tot up your assets, and then we've got certain allowable deductions. Now, debts owed by the deceased. So if you die and you owe somebody some money, then the chances are that they're still going to get that money. Now, the only time that you can deduct it in the death estate computation there is if it's legally enforceable. Yeah. So legally enforceable debts. So things like credit card bills, for example. You cannot deduct, and this is something that comes up in the exam, gambling debts. So you could owe the local bookies an awful lot of money, and it might be legally enforceable, but we don't care because gambling debts are specifically disallowed. Yeah. Verbal promises to pay. So let's say in the week before you died, you ran over the neighbour's cat on your drive and you promised that you were going to pay the vet bill. Yeah, but you died before you could pay it. The debt isn't legally enforceable because it's a verbal promise to pay. So therefore that isn't deductible in the death estate. So other things that we can deduct, say, is outstanding taxes. So if you owe any income tax up to the date of death or any capital gains tax up to the date of death, then it's still got to be paid, but the amount that you pay would be an allowable deduction in the death estate. And then we can have reasonable funeral expenses. So we can have the cost of the headstone and the wake and the funeral itself and so on. Yeah, that's fine. Now, the only exemption, say, you're going to get in your death estate is your spouse. Yeah. So if you leave everything to your spouse, then obviously it wipes everything out and therefore there's nothing left to charge to tax. But what you get in exam questions generally is just some of the estate being left to the spouse. So whatever we've left, we can deduct right at the bottom, and that gives us our gross chargeable estate after the spouse exemption. Now, little note there. So I've gone through a couple of them. One thing that I didn't mention was to do with the mortgage. So we can deduct a mortgage against a property if it's a repayment mortgage or an interest-only mortgage. Now, there is something in existence, or it used to be, they're not very common these days, something called an endowment mortgage. And an endowment mortgage contained an element of life insurance. So that if you had an endowment mortgage on your property, if you died, the insurance policy would pay it off. So therefore, it would cancel out the debt effectively. Now, these are not very common in the real world these days, but they do occasionally crop up in exam questions. So if you see that it's an endowment mortgage, do not deduct it against the value of the property in the death estate. Okay. So once we've got to our death estate and we've got to our gross chargeable estate figure, then we need to calculate the tax. So once again, just to go over step by step, the first thing that we do, of course, is we deal with our lifetime gifts. Then we have a look at our death estate, and the death estate then takes over any remainder of our nil rate band, like we saw in that D example. But we've got another nil rate band available on the death estate, and it's called the residence nil rate band. So we're going to have a look at that very, very shortly, but you would actually consider the residence nil rate band before the normal nil rate band in the death estate. Now, anything not covered by these nil rate bands, of course, because your nil rate band has been used up by your transfers in the previous 7 years. So anything that's left over after your residence nil rate band and the remainder of your nil rate band, 40% tax, like we saw with D. Now, if required, say, state who will pay and the due date for payment. Now, who will pay on the death estate is your executors, or sometimes known as personal representatives. So these are the people that sort out all your affairs when you die, because obviously you're dead and you can't do it yourself. So it could be a solicitor, it could be a member of your family, yeah, if they're competent enough to do it. But those are the people that are responsible for administering your death estate and paying any tax that's due. The due date for payment is within 12 months of the end of the month of death. However, you're better off paying it within 6 months at the end of the month of death, for the simple reason is interest will start to accrue after that time. Yeah. So, or within 6 months of the end of the month of death to avoid interest. Okay. So let's have a look at a death estate. And we've got example 3 there, and we've got Hamish. So Hamish died on the 1st of May 2025, and his death estate comprised the following. So we've got a house, we've got personal chattels, we've got some shares in an ISA, we've got a car, we've got a life assurance policy, and we've got funeral expenses there. And he left the house to his wife and all the remaining assets to his daughter. And we've only got one lifetime gift there, which is £100,000 cash to his daughter in September 2023 when she got married. So that is a pet, isn't it? So we need to work out that pet value because it's within 7 years of the date of death. And therefore, of course, it's going to eat into our nil rate band. So let's have a look at Hamish. So our lifetime gift, we've got cash to the daughter, and that was on in September 2023. And that was £100,000. Now, back when Hamish was alive and he made the gift, we would have been able to claim the marriage exemption. So from a parent to a child, it's £5,000. And back when Hamish made the gift, we would have been able to claim a couple of annual exemptions as well. So we would have claimed the annual exemption for 2023-24 and 2022-23. So 2 lots of 3,000. And that would have been would reduce the pet down to 89, wouldn't it? So obviously there was no tax to pay during lifetime, and there's going to be no tax to pay on Hamish's death either, because it's covered by the nil rate band, isn't it? Right, the nil rate band at death, so therefore there is no IHT to pay. But because it's within 7 years prior to the date of Hamish's death, it will reduce the nil rate band on the death estate. Okay, so that's the lifetime gift out of the way. Nice and straightforward, that one, unlike the previous example where there was quite a lot going on. So we've got Hamish's death estate then. So death estate. And we've got his house. So it doesn't mention anything about any mortgages or anything on it, so we can just take it at face value. So we've got the house, which is valued at 350. We've got the personal chattels. So all your bits and bobs that you leave when you die, 95. We've got shares held in an ISA, but we don't care whether they're held in an ISA or not. ISAs don't get an exemption for inheritance tax, and that's 16. And we've got a car. Once again, exempt from capital gains tax, not exempt from inheritance tax, 22,000. And we've got a life assurance policy. And it's on Hamish's life, yeah, on his own life. So therefore it's going to pay out on death. So we've got proceeds. And it's paid out £200,000. We've got some expenses in there as well. So expenses, we've got funeral expenses. So less funeral expenses. And we can assume that that's reasonable. Reasonable is according to your station in life. So for example, when the Queen died a few years ago, you can imagine that her funeral cost a hell of a lot more than £2,500, probably several million. But it does depend on your station in life. But in this case, we can assume that 2.5 is actually quite cheap for a funeral these days. And that gives us a figure so far of 680,500. So that's our assets less our liabilities. And we've got the spouse exemption, haven't we? Because he's left the house to his wife. So less of the spouse exemption. And the house is valued at 350,000, isn't it? And that gives us what's known as our gross chargeable estate. Or GCE for short. And we've ended up with 330,500. So once we get to that point, we think about nil rate bands. Now, the first one that we would think about would be the residence nil rate band. Now, we haven't covered that yet. That's coming up soon, but I can tell you that it doesn't actually apply in this case. So we've just got our normal nil rate band. And we start off with our full 325. Remember, and we reduce it by anything chargeable in the 7 years prior to the date of death. So less the pet to the daughter in September 23. And that was 89, wasn't it? So that gives us a nil rate band available on the death estate of 236. So 236 is taxed at 0%, and anything that isn't covered by the nil rate band, and in this case it happens to be 94,500. And that is taxed at 40%. £37,800. Okay, so that's the death estate.